that, we have a really exciting speaker with us today. I have had the privilege of speaking with this gentleman in person, and I love what he has, and I want what he has. And with that, I would like to introduce Don, our trustee at large.
They always react that way. My name is Don. I am an alcoholic. Hi, Don. And I thank you all for showing up today. I'm going to try to share with you today some of the journey I've been on. And it isn't just the journey to the Soviet Union. That's just one piece of a big thing. I've never had this amount of time to do this in. I was talking to Pat in my favorite prayer stall downstairs to the right. Little tidbits that I've told many of you individually along the way. Maybe we can pull them together today, and I can figure out where the hell I've been. The journey started a lot of years ago. What I want to do this afternoon is share a number of things with you. Service in general, my service experience, what a trustee does. A couple of my assignments as World Service Delegate. I've been to 2 World Service meetings and just completed a 17-day trip through the Soviet Union for Alcoholics Anonymous. And I'm going to have to try to do that in less than 2 hours. You heard what service is. It's 12-step work on the streets. It's the things that keep the doors open so you and I can get in where the alcoholics can't call out. It's the activities that make it possible for the person that does not know, as I didn't, that I'm an alcoholic, that gives me a chance to find a place where I can find out what the hell's wrong with me. The first service that was provided to me was a group of convicts held a meeting on a Saturday afternoon and invited me to come. And I did. And I've been here ever since. I found here what I needed, both in terms of recovery, personal satisfaction, and the opposite of the most painful of all human experiences, which is to me to know that you're useless. There's no deeper human pain. Because of Alcoholics Anonymous, my life means something today. I told you I was going to hum. See, God gave me back my life as a free, clear gift. December 26th of 1967. And then he gave me Alcoholics Anonymous so that gift could take on some meaning and some purpose and some dimension. And it's the dimension I want to share with you today. The first thing I knew about Alcoholics Anonymous is that every Saturday and every Sunday there was a place I was to go called a 12-step study school. And I wasn't allowed to talk for 5 weeks. None of the new guys were. The folks that ran the school said, if you guys knew anything at all, you wouldn't be here. So just be still and listen. And then I was given my first service job. I was given a big book and the new group coming out of the fish tank in that penitentiary to carry through the 12-step study school. I now had some experience. And I got to tell you, I enjoyed being able to say to them for the next 5 weeks, you new guys have nothing to say. I believe the 12 steps got me sober. And they are a part of my life today, but I also believe that continually giving it away is what keeps me sober. I was left with an obligation that can never be paid. I know I have an obligation to the people that are walking in the door here today, but my obligation extends to the people that will come through that door 50 years from now when I'm dead and gone. I have an obligation to see to it, to the best of my ability, that they get the same shot at the same message that I got. This is the one that works. So my service experience has taught me it isn't so much what I do, it's what I don't do. I have a lot of real good ideas about how AA could work better, and I promise you'll never hear them. put them in inventory, call my sponsor, and then we burn them. I am a relic. In 1970, I was the GSR for the Denver Young People's Group. And in 1973, I was GSR for the Denver Young People's Group. Then I got too old. We, just a little sidelight, by accident in Nashville, by the way, a bunch of the Denver Young People showed up from the old Denver Young People's Group. And this coming June, we're hoping to have a big reunion down there. It seems that for whatever the reason, the people who were in that Denver Young People's Group in the late 60s and early 70s are almost without exception still sober. Those that haven't died did not return to drinking. And I think I can tell you what it is that caused that. We were tolerant fundamentalists. We did exactly what it said. And we banded together in fellowship, and we worked the steps, and we went to the penitentiary, and we went to Buena Vista, and we went to the treatment centers, and we showed up at assemblies. We were there, and we showed up. There are three things that living in service in this fellowship have left me absolutely certain of. Things I'm supposed to do. Number one, show up. Number two, speak up. Number three, shut up. And if I do all three at any given function, I've done what I came to do. If I only do one or two of them, I haven't done what I came to do. I came out of the penitentiary and got deeply involved here in Denver. One of the major services that was provided for me immediately, I was not allowed to have a car by parole people. So from the first night, people began to shuttle me around to different meetings throughout this state. And I got my dimension on AA expanded a little bit. It started with my 12-step study school meeting, and then I was allowed to go to the big meeting on Friday night where people from other groups came. Their groups weren't real, but I at least understood there was more than just this little meeting that I go to. And then I got out here, and I began to see that there's meetings everywhere out here. We'd go to Greeley and Fort Collins and Loveland and Sterling and Showgrow, and then out south, we just travel around. We had our home group. We met on Tuesday night and Sunday night, and we were always there. So I learned the concept of a home group very early. My home group right now meets on Thursday night at 8 o'clock at 9th and Galapego. It's called the Denver Thursday Night Group. And if I'm in town and the dog hasn't died, I'll be there. So I began to see things happen. Now, my entry into general service, and please understand I have to talk about general service because that's my experience. There are a number of ways that you can be in service in this fellowship. But I had learned that if you see somebody in AA who has something you want, get in their hip pocket, stay there until you find out what it is and how they got it. And there's a fellow named Gary Brown running around here in those days. And he was GSR. Now, I didn't know whether that was a condition or a disease, or it didn't matter. Gary had something that I knew I didn't have. It was just a kind of a quality to what he did. And we were people who would normally not mix. Gary's about 6'2", and he's so pretty. If you wanted to sell men's clothes, you just put them on Gary and let him walk around, people buy them. And I was a flat-top, snaggle-toothed, pot-bellied little ex-convict. My English was still being formulated. And Gary and his daughter and his wife were going over to Montrose, Colorado, to an area assembly. I had no idea what that was, but if that's where he got what he had, I decided I'm going too. And he hadn't planned on that, but I said, I'm going with you. And he had accepted being my sponsor at the time, and I learned how to play that game. If you're my sponsor and I want to go with you, you don't have any choice. Well, I got to that area assembly, and I had a spiritual awakening. Up to that point, everybody I'd ever met in AA was at least 100 years sober, and you all loved each other without reservation. And then I got into my first area assembly. And they started arguing about things that didn't make any sense. A couple of them even called each other names. It was terrible. I was distressed. And it bothered me all afternoon. But that evening, when everybody went to eat, you know how they do. The restaurant had set a huge table out, and all these same people who'd been at each other's throats all afternoon were sitting around that table eating and laughing. And there was a quality to that laughter that I had never heard anywhere. And I can remember standing there wondering, will I ever be part of that? And Big Frank got up. He was area chairman then. And he walked over and he invited me to sit at the table. And I caught the worst case of GSR. Oh. I found a way to discharge that obligation, to give back what I've been given, and to be useful. No better, no worse than anybody else, but to be useful. To pay my debt. And I got involved in service, and I began to learn about things, and I discovered most service people don't have the slightest idea what service people are supposed to do. At that time, service sponsorship was not as heavy as it is today. And then somebody gave me a book, and I read it, and I learned some things that have had me in trouble ever since. I was asked to serve on the area committee as corrections chairperson, which I did. Then I was asked to serve as chairperson and was elected to that and served 2 years as area chairman. The toughest and most satisfying job in all of Alcoholics Anonymous service for me. It was my training ground. Think about it. Your job is to keep a room full of opinionated people in just enough order so the opinions get expressed and no fights break out. I learned how to listen. The most important thing I can offer anybody who wants to get into service is learn how to listen. Group conscience takes time. I have to listen to your opinion, and you have to listen to mine, and we have to listen to Gary's, and then Pat's, and then we change. And that process takes time. And at the beginning, there is no conscience. There's my opinion. And my opinion is without conscience. But as it develops, you begin to hear what's going to be best for the fellowship as a whole. And I have in service had many, many times had to go along with something that I didn't think was quite right. But the group conscience spoke and said, we will do this. And they've been right every time. And those few times when we make a mistake, we are a self-correcting society. We have the bottom line of all corrections. If I don't like what you just told me to do, I'm not going to do it. That's all. And if our groups don't like what our committees do, don't pay any attention to the committee. Don't send them any money. Just ignore them, and pretty soon they'll come around. But if the committees are doing the things that promote the carrying of the message to Alcoholics Anonymous, please get behind them all the way. Become members of the committee. Do what needs to be done. Send the dollars, send the support, and be active. And that's easy to do. Well, I went on from there. I was asked to stand as area delegate. Now, you must understand, in Colorado at one time, a terrible thing happened on our area committee. At election time, no one would stand. No one. We had no candidate for delegate, and we had no candidate for chairperson, and no one was willing to stand. So the current chairperson and the current delegate just changed hats. And this happens a lot, and it's okay, but it wasn't by group conscience. They did it out of attrition because nobody else would do it. We decided then that'll never happen again. So we began a policy as, if you are able, stand for everything you're eligible for. But I was asked to stand as delegate, and I didn't want to do that. It scared me. I wasn't ready, and I knew that. And I started whining and whimpering. And one of the places I whine and whimper are the people I sponsor. They seem to have a clearer perception of things than my own sponsor does sometimes. And I told one of them that I've had, 12, 13 years at this. It's time for me to take a rest. And he said, wait a minute, you've always told us that you never say no to any AA request. Well, that shot that one down. And he said, besides, they haven't asked you to be delegate, they just asked you to stand. You might not even get elected. And that shot that down. And I did my digging and looking around. I finally came to the one thing that really bothered me. I was afraid I'd screw something up. And I called Mike Rainbolt, who's one of my service sponsors, a past trustee from Oklahoma. And I said, Mike, I'm afraid of this thing, that I might screw it up. And he laughed. He says, kid, he always calls me kid. He says, you can't do anything in 2 years that'll screw this up anyway. Why don't you just go and have some fun? And I was elected, and I went and I had some fun. 4 years ago in November, the people of Colorado put my name forth as a candidate for trustee at large. Now, I can tell you one of the facts of my life is that I knew on that day I am not board of directors material. And you know what? After 3.5 years, I'm right. Serving on the board has been an incredible experience, and the work we do has been important and vital and worthwhile. But once each board weekend, we put on our ties and our coats, and we sit down and have dinner together. And I don't want to talk about it. Acting as a board member just isn't my favorite thing. Okay. But through a series of circumstances that I believe were God-directed, this human being, who is truly not, by corporate standards, a good candidate, was selected to be trustee at large. And I was selected. The process is very simple. Each delegate area is allowed to put forth one candidate, and there are 91 delegate areas. Then at their luncheons at the conference, that's narrowed down to 6 people. We used third legacy procedure and dropped one back in, and mine was left. So I got to figure, he must have a sense of humor or know something I don't, because here I am. Now, the trustee at large is an interesting position because even up to this time, it's not really well defined. I know what my legal duties are and my duties on the board. But there are regional trustees, there are 2 trustees at large, there are the New York trustees, and 7 Class A non-alcoholic trustees that make up the board. We're responsible, first of all, for spending that $7 or $8 million a year, for overseeing it. Alcoholics Anonymous, U.S. Canada, is about an $8 million a year business. The General Service Board of Alcoholics Anonymous owns 2 major publishing companies. AWS, which publishes all of our literature, and the Grapevine Incorporated, which publishes the Grapevine and all the little trinkets that the Grapevine puts out that you'd raise hell with if AWS put them out. Okay. The material published by A World Services Incorporated is all approved by a General Service Conference at one time or another. It does not go into publication. It's about a 3-year process, from the time the idea is conceived, through the writing, through the checking, through committee, and finally to the General Service Office floor where it's voted on. And all conference approved means is that some conference somewhere said, yes, this truly reflects the general thinking of Alcoholics Anonymous. We own it, we'll publish it, we'll say this is AA. Anything else is personal opinion, and we desperately need that, so the Grapevine is there. You can say anything you want, and if you say it in a way that's interesting, they'll publish it. And they're in trouble all the time for that, because they publish stuff that is not approved by anybody. But I'm a firm believer that as long as we keep talking, we're safe and we're healthy. Whether it's loud or soft, controversy outside our fellowship is to be avoided at all costs. I truly believe that controversy within our fellowship is why we keep hanging on. I learned that from an old fellow here in Denver. If there wasn't controversy, Buddy Shriver started controversy. And it used to make me real mad until I came to understand we better keep talking to each other. Well, anyway, I got back there and found out my real assignments. All of your trustees serve on either 3 committees and 1 corporate board, or on 4 committees. The committees are very simply the operating arm of the conference. The conference says, do this. We want this pamphlet. We want this video. We want this film. We want this activity. We want this workbook. The trustees' committees put all that together, do the work, and take it back to the next conference for approval. My first 3 years I served on the Public Information Committee, which meant I went back once a month to meet with the Public Information Committee to deal with radio spots, TV spots, public information stories. Somebody, when CBS calls, has got to talk to them. And the conference and the trustees' PI committee was delegated that so we could get one message and not 500. My very first activity at the Public Information Committee got me in trouble. The very first thing I had to do, they presented something they were getting ready to do, and the adrenaline hit, and I had to say, they're not going to like that out there. That won't work. And I was told, kid, just settle down, you don't know. And 2 months later, sure as hell, it didn't work. And the chairman and I became as close of friends as you can ever get. He used to chair that committee with a pistol instead of a gavel. It's a freewheeler. But I learned some more about listening out there. The issue at hand was the public information spots for young people. There were just 6 young people, made a quick statement, and then if you want to know more about it, contact Alcoholics Anonymous. What they said, though, 3 of them, was that my name is so-and-so and I'm an alcoholic and a drug addict. And that may be so, but Alcoholics Anonymous General Service has no business saying that. Well, the delegates didn't like it either. It got pulled off of the air. But one of the fellows on the committee used to yell at me. His name was Howard. He's dead now. He's a PI man from New York. Scream and yell at me, and I thought he didn't like me. I found out later that he said I was the only one he respected because I yelled back. I have a tendency to get defensive when you attack me. I got right up in Howard's face. He'd say, we're skirting the truth. At all the meetings I go to, that's how they introduce themselves. And I'd get up in Howard's face and say, that isn't so, Howard. One day I heard what Howard said. He said, at all the meetings I go to, that's how they introduce themselves. And Howard went to 3 meetings a week in New York City. And it finally hit me, I didn't have to fight with Howard. Howard was talking from his personal experience, that's all. And that was his experience, and he had to come from there. When I started negotiating and communicating with Howard instead of yelling at him. And the deal was, as I went around the country, because I do, without prepping anybody, I'd ask young people's groups, treatment centers, all these other sources to simply write Howard and tell them how they do it. And some did it that way, but the bulk of them didn't. And so Howard and I came to peace over a very important issue for Alcoholics Anonymous. It may be true, but on the radio we ought not say that. The conference stand on it, by the way, since you're interested. In any public information, the mention of drugs is to be eliminated except as it is an integral part of a person's story. I can stand here and tell you on Christmas night 1967, I took an overdose of drugs and laid down to die because that happened. And in that context, the conference has agreed. That's legitimate. Any of you seen the film Young People in AA? Okay, we worked 2.5 years on that, getting it to that state where reality is reflected without us deviating from our primary purpose. That's part of the job of your trustees. The next committee I sat on was treatment, and I've rotated off of that onto CPC. I've been on the corrections committee from the very beginning. For some reason, they think somebody who's been to prison knows something about corrections. So, that's neither here nor there. I enjoy the committee. My favorite, however, is why I'm here today. Part of my job as trustee at large is I am the delegate to the World Service meeting that's held every 2 years. alternating outside the country and in the country. It was in New York last October, and we were in Guatemala 2 years from there. Myself and the Canadian trustee at large are the delegates from U.S. Canada to that conference. It's the only real AA service meeting that there is. All others are regional or district or whatever. And the lovely thing about this meeting is there is nothing that we do there that's binding on anybody except that body of people, and that can be changed the next conference. So nobody has any axes to grind. As a member of the Trustees International Committee, our job has been primarily to deal with AA internationally as it began to grow and to just pass on what we've learned. We translate a few pamphlets. The basic pamphlets is AA for You, the 44 questions, and one other into several different languages. But they have been up to this time mostly for the populations in this country that speak other languages. That's changing. The world is forcing us to grow up, whether we like it or not. In 1986, I was told that I was to go to Guatemala for this meeting. Well, that's interesting to me. First of all, the kind of crimes I committed prohibit me from ever getting a passport. And I mentioned that to somebody. And they said, we can fix that. We have contacts in Washington. We can get you a pardon. I must tell you, that was tempting. I've got a pardon from the state, but my federal drug smuggling conviction has never been turned over. And that's the one that keeps me from getting a passport. And I had to pray about that and decided, no, I won't do it that way. I'm not to use AA that way. So I sent my application and $50 and figured we'll see what happens. And the next thing I know, I've got a passport. I always wanted one of those things. So I got on the airplane in Colorado and I headed for Guatemala with a little bit of Spanish under my belt. I figured it would be a courtesy if I could speak a little language. And I speak a little Denver, Chicano, South Side. If you're planning to travel, don't do that. Went through Miami, ended up in Guatemala, and came around a corner, and right in front of me was Customs, and one of my old images came up. The last time I'd seen that picture, I ended up in a federal penitentiary. And there it was, all over again, and the adrenaline was flowing. I'm thinking, uh-oh. I don't even have any vitamins with me. I wasn't taking any chances. So I headed through Customs, and they searched my bag and took my $2 and let me out. And there I am, somewhat stunned, standing in the middle of an airport in Guatemala without the language, wondering, now what? Is there someone here to meet me or to show me how to get to the hotel? And it's a great, huge rotunda in their airport, and up on the second level were hundreds and hundreds of people. And some of them had signs that I couldn't read. And as I was looking around, I saw John Bragg, the manager of our General Service Office in New York, standing up on the upper balcony. So I went outside and around and back through Customs, where they searched my bag again. Not anywhere near as nervous as I was the first time. Talked to John, and he said, there's a group around here somewhere looking for you, and they have a card with your name on it. So I went back through Customs, where they searched my bag again. By now, I'm an old hand. And sure enough, down on the street were 5 Guatemalans with a sign that said, welcome. Guatemala City AA provided a vital service that day. They knew we were coming. They knew that we would all be nervous. They mobilized. Everybody in Guatemala City AA was put on a team to meet the incoming delegates and make sure they got to the hotel. Now, 3 of these guys didn't speak any English at all. One of them said to me, "I've learned just enough English to welcome you," and he never said another word, so I figured that's it. That was it. But then Oswaldo began to talk, and I began to share with him. He was my interpreter, and we both became aware of something. This whole thing is about communication. I speak Colorado American, and Oswaldo spoke English. My Spanish is street Spanish, and his was Guatemalan Spanish. And it became very important for me and for Oswaldo, because he and I talked about it, to immediately begin to set aside all the cute ways I have of saying things, all my local colloquialisms and imagery and all that, and begin to really communicate. Because that's what we were there for that week, was to communicate how can we better carry this message. There were 27 countries represented in Guatemala, and that was our only purpose for being there. How can we better carry the message? Literature issues came up, all kinds of things came up on how to better carry the message. Now, we had simultaneous translation, and some of that got to be fun. What that means is that you must either speak Spanish or English to be a delegate to this meeting. And if the person up here speaking Spanish, somebody in a booth back there is running that through their head and simultaneously speaking the English translation of that, you wear earphones to hear it, and vice versa. Well, the little lady from Belgium spoke 5 languages. She speaks Flemish, Dutch, French, English, and Spanish. But when the Irishman from County Cork was speaking English, she couldn't understand a word he said. So she'd put on the earphones and listen to the Spanish translation of the Irishman. There's no communication problem in Alcoholics Anonymous. We will find a way to get it across. I learned some things about dedication in Guatemala in talking to the Mexican delegates. They have 3 prisons that are on islands. And in order for Alcoholics Anonymous to be able to go to those prisons, you must go for 8 days at a time and live on the island as a prisoner with the prisoner. The boat only runs once every 8 days. And they have no problem at all getting people to do that. And so AA is flourishing in those prisons. And I had to ask myself, would I do that? I'm pretty dedicated. Would I do that? And the answer was one of those mixed things. Yeah, I would, but I sure hope they don't call this week. Mexico had a problem that's purely alcoholic. One bunch didn't like what the other bunch was doing, so they started a second general service office, which put us right in the middle of a big controversy. We only give permission to translate and distribute our literature to 1 at a time. Now, we deal with the first one. And the second one said, well, to hell with that. We're going to do it anyway. And the first one said, well, can't you stop them? And we were getting caught up in something. So we took the stand we generally take. At the Ibero-American meeting, we suggested that someone suggested to the Mexicans that they solve that themselves. It still hasn't been solved. It's in the process of being healed, however. In talking with this year's group of Mexican delegates, there's an awareness now creeping through AA in Mexico that we better get unified or we're going to die. Which is the same thing we learned years ago. The key to all AA service is unity. We may not agree personally, but we do agree on what our purpose is. The Japanese delegate, Takayuki Hayashi, was one of my favorites. He spoke just a little English. He went home because the thing he picked up that he liked most was "see you later." Japan has been 10 years at that time getting 2,000 members. At our meeting in October, it's now 2,500. It's very slow over there. There are some cultural problems. There were only 10 women. Women cannot be alcoholics. Can't happen. But that's beginning to break down slowly. Over here on this table is a Japanese big book and a number of other things in other languages. During the break or whenever, you're more than welcome to look at it. They have, most countries when they translate our big book, leave the stories out because they're American stories. The Japanese have it all in there. They say, we want real AA. They have everything. They're translating and publishing everything. On our trip to the Soviet Union, it was suggested to us by the Russians that we leave our stories in there. But what they'd like to do is alternate them, an American and a Russian, because I got to tell you the truth, there ain't that much difference. Culturally or not, drunks are drunks wherever you find them. Yeah. Well, I came back from Guatemala changed. If I talk about my personal life as we go through here, I don't know any other thing I can do for you. I'm trying to take you with me on this journey. I live in a house with 3 marvelous women, a wife and 2 stepdaughters. I am by necessity, a neat freak. My mind is so badly damaged, I have to have things where, when I can't remember where they are, I can say, if I were in my right mind, where would I have put it? And go there, and it has to be there. Okay. The ladies in my house put things down, and that's where they stay. So rather than whimper and whine and bitch about that, I made myself a room in my basement. My early sponsor told me I should always have a quiet place of my own anyway. And I got to tell you, it's neat down there. And tidy. Except for one place. My mail for the last 3.5 years has been incredible. Tons of paper flow through my mailbox. And I do a quick sort when I get there. There's a pile of as soon as I can get to it, and a pile of one of these days soon, and there's a pile of absolute immediate importance that I'll get to next week, and then there's today. And I came back and I didn't fit in my room anymore. I didn't fit. It wasn't quite right. And since I know my room is a reflection of what's going on inside of me, I looked around what didn't fit. Well, I needed, first of all, to sort these piles of correspondence. I've always been told when it's time to sort. We call it inventory, whatever you want to do. I needed to sort out. And I looked at the piles and I thought, oh my God, you know what? This pile, as soon as I can get to it, has stuff in there from 2 and 3 years ago. That doesn't even need sorted. Out. If it's been that long and you haven't yelled at me, I don't need to look. If you wrote to me in 85 or 86, please write again. I threw you out. 3 piles went that way. 2 great big green bags out the door. The immediate attention next week and today is all that stayed. Well, my personal experiences were the same. There are a lot of things happened to me I don't need to sort out. They have become part of me. But I had to move a chair, and I had to move this and that and change things in order to fit into my room again and in order to fit into my skin again. Because this thing causes growth, whether you like it or not. It causes me to see things in different ways. I would like to read you very briefly a letter I got from Elsie Takiri from New Zealand, because she says what I would have said if I'd have been able to say that. It describes what happened to us in Guatemala. I'm not going to read it all. A very wise old man, my service sponsor, said, "It is truly the most splendid thing that we alcoholics who came from all walks of life, from all parts of the globe, can come together in Guatemala, we who have never met, yet recognize each other. We who don't know one another, yet know all there is to know about each other. Can come together and love each other simply because we are what we are." I found my experiences in Guatemala have had a profound effect on me, not only as a result of a very rewarding World Service meeting, but as a culmination of a series of events and some very special people that God deemed I should learn about, spiritual love from. Something happened to me in Guatemala, something so beautiful, so spiritual, that it touched me deep within my soul and has left me with a lasting sense within me. That's about the closest word I can find to describe it. I don't really understand it, and it doesn't matter if I ever do. But I do know this: I am not the same person who left America for Guatemala. Now, the way that came out in Elsie, because I saw her in Mayoka in October, in Guatemala, Elsie was a marvelous red-headed Maori. In New York, she had gray hair. She quit making it red. She said she doesn't need that anymore. And those are the kind of changes. I just cut my sideburns off and learned how to wear a tie. This, by the way, is primarily to show you how much I respect you. But do you understand how much I respect you? If you do, I'm going to take this damn thing off. Okay? Well, following Guatemala, I ran around, gave the Guatemala report here and there, and continued to do what I was supposed to do on the board, and got in deeper and deeper trouble. There is an activity that causes trouble, and it's one of the 3 necessary activities. It's the speak up part. I have a tendency to speak up, and that will cause you to be in trouble from time to time. It's good trouble. Don't let it worry you. What it brought me back to was this October. Now, the trip to the Soviet Union actually started, and I want to give you the pieces of this so you can understand how your fellowship operates at this time. It started a year ago in September when Mr. Gorbachev and Mr. Reagan got together and decided there were certain key areas in each country that we needed to exchange ideas and experience on. At the very top of both lists was alcoholism. So a group, what Mr. Gorbachev did back in when he first came in, his first act was to institute some blue laws, cut vodka production in half, cut the sale hours down, do a number of things that are just silly. But and then he established the All-Union Voluntary Temperance Promotion Society, which overnight had 13 million members. It's a party function. Okay. Now, as part of the exchange, a lady named Marilyn Jacobson, who works for the government, established a separate non-government agency so we wouldn't have government problems, an autonomous operation where both the Russians and the Americans could funnel their delegates without any political hassle. The first trip was an invitation from the Soviets to a group of our doctors and treatment center people and EAP people and a member of Alcoholics Anonymous to visit the Soviet Union for a conference and to visit their facilities. They have a 7,000-bed hospital in Moscow and a 3,000-bed hospital in Moscow and throughout the country. Well, anyway, because of the great hurry and the need to do that, our General Service Office Manager, John Bragg, took that trip. And he came back different. Part of his experience is that for a while he wondered why he was there. Nobody even talked to him. I had the same experience with the Soviets when they came here. And I think it's so I could really understand what anonymous means. When you wonder what the hell am I here for, you're anonymous. But he came back knowing that this activity should probably continue. Now, we walk a delicate line between attraction and promotion, a very delicate line. If we don't tell people and our friends who we are, they won't know we exist. What we have to avoid is saying we're the best. So we walk that line. John made a report to us. We debated any response, and at that time there was nothing for us to respond to. Us being the General Service Board of Alcoholics Anonymous, U.S., Canada. We had nothing to respond to. Last May, a group of Soviets came here from the All-Union Voluntary Temperance Promotion Society. I love to say that because I can. Some of the best friends Alcoholics Anonymous has are in the treatment business. And Dan Anderson, who was in at the beginning of Hazleton, said this group of people is coming, these Soviets, the plan was for them to travel for 10 days throughout the United States in 3 different teams, looking at treatment centers, EAP programs. What are we doing about alcoholism? Dan said, unless you have a member of Alcoholics Anonymous with this group, it's going to be a meaningless trip. And everyone concurred. So part of my assignment as chairman of the International Committee and my Canadian counterpart's assignment and our staff secretary's assignment, we were assigned each one of these teams. And we went to Washington, D.C., where the delegation met. And the first day, you'd have loved it. It would have blown your mind. Hal Marley put together 16 alcoholics for a 2-hour meeting. And these are people you'd recognize, most of them. Because the Soviet experience is there is no such thing as recovery from alcoholism. They have not experienced that. The alcoholics that they have labeled alcoholics are all locked up with numbers. You're registered and put away because there is no recovery. If you've ever been a doctor and you've become an alcoholic, you'll never be a doctor again. If you were a foreman in a plant, you'll never be a foreman again. You've already proven you can't handle it. That's been their method up to now. Well, Hal brought these 16 guys in and they each gave a pitch. And it was wonderful to see, 3 to 5 minutes each, and the Soviets were going, because they recognized some of these people too. The United States Congress and Senate and some of the other things are just riddled with alcoholics, and some of them are sober. Then we broke into teams, and the team I went with went to Chicago, Minneapolis, back into New York. And did we have some fun? For the first 3 or 4 days, I wondered, what the hell am I doing here? Nobody talked to me. I carried luggage and wondered when they ask AA questions, how come they don't ask me? And when we got to Minneapolis, Sarah called me from West Virginia and said, I'm going home. I'm not doing any good here. Why am I here having the same experience? I don't know what that was about, except that it began to settle in. As we went, wherever we went, the programs did their show and tell, and at the end, every one of them said, but without Alcoholics Anonymous to follow up on this, big and rushing to the heart. And he and I had a breakthrough one day at lunch. We started talking, first of all, he said to me, my people have been fighting wars for centuries and we're tired of it. And then he and I talked about how I don't want my grandson shooting at his and vice versa. And then somehow, as does happen, I mentioned that as an alcoholic I'd had a little difficulty in my life. And I've been in prison for smuggling. And the old boy lit up. It seems that he's an old smuggler too. Now he smuggled guns and I smuggled dope, but the job's the same. We had common ground and we began to communicate. Mr. Dmitriev and I left friends. In fact, he got to me real good at one point. We'd gotten around on the 9th day to showing family pictures. And he took a look at my wife and he said, oh my. He said, it's very dangerous to leave such a beautiful woman alone for so long. You should go home. Well, I was thinking the same thing at that time. So we established our initial contacts, and in the review session afterwards, they met at one table, we met at another table, to decide what were the most important points for future contact. And at the very top of the Russian list was we need to learn more about AA principles. At the very top of our list was more AA contact. This is what Dan Anderson keeps, personal contact. Now, we did get them to some meetings in New York. One got to the Greenwich Village group, and they enjoyed it. Another went to an uptown group, and the response from one of those members was, "It seems to me that you all get divorced and marry each other." In June, the Soviets sent a group of doctors, psychologists, narcologists. They have a new science they developed called narcology. It's a medical specialty dealing with alcohol and drugs. And so they sent a bunch to the Rutgers Summer School on Alcoholism Studies. And Gail Milgram, the director of that program, said, if we don't have AA here, it's a waste of time. So she called, and Sarah and I went to Rutgers. I finally got to college, as an instructor, by the way. Call me professor. Where we visited again with the folks we were really wanting to talk to. The temperance people, as nice as they were not the ones we wanted to talk to. They don't believe in recovery. We're now talking with the doctors. It was their feeling that all these busy things we've been doing, they really didn't have a chance to talk with us. Maybe we could come there. Now, one of the things that our board looked for is an invitation. We don't want to go without invitation. But one of the members of the delegation said, you don't want a formal invitation. What that means is that we will invite you, we'll pay your way, and we'll tell you exactly who you get to see and where you go. You don't want that. Then he spent 20 minutes telling us what an invitation sounds like. It sounds like this. Mr. Dmitriev said, when I asked him, do you think we should come to Russia? He said, yes, and the means are already in place. And then he spent 20 minutes telling us what it sounds like and what to do. So we brainstormed and prayed about that and decided, do we really have an invitation? And I started some correspondence. I've got a sack full of correspondence. And the overwhelming reply was, we would sure like to meet with you in our central office in Moscow during this period, blah, blah, blah. The Ministry of Health man tickled me to death because he and I'd gotten rather close. And his letter came back, Dear Don, we would like to meet with you in our central office on such and such a date. So we pretty well concluded we had an invitation. What we had was a CPC call to make, cooperation with the professional community. That was the purpose of the General Service Board trip to the Soviet Union. Now let me tell you a little about the World Service meeting before we get into the trip. In fact, we may need to take a potty break, whatever you decide. This last World Service meeting was the finest AA service function I have ever attended in my service life, and that's a long one. Never, ever have I seen happen what happened there. We started with what we left in Guatemala. Total unity from day one. From the time they were registering at the desk, there was complete unity and unanimity of purpose among these delegates from all over the world in why we were there and what we were going to do this week. That sense of purpose started from day one. Now, there's some really powerful folks beginning to show up in AA. Many of them don't have general service structure like we do, but they're swinging toward it because what they're doing isn't working. But stuff like this, we were talking about our purpose being to carry the AA message. And the delegate from Ireland got up and said, I have to ask this. What message are we carrying? Are we carrying the AA message today? Well, that's going to be number 4 on my list of things to ask myself from here on. Is the message I'm carrying to you today the AA message? It must be. If it isn't, let's help whoever's message it is get strong. I haven't had a chance to do this yet, and you're not going to get all this, but the thing started off in typical AA fashion. The General Service Office on Friday, there's a meeting at 11 o'clock, a regular AA meeting. And all the delegates and all of us were there, and you can imagine the sense of that, what was in that room, and people were just being called on indiscriminately. And near the end of the meeting, they called on a fellow, and he gave his name, said he was alcoholic. He said, "I've been sober 20 hours, and this is my very first AA meeting." I've got a hunch he's going to stay sober. If ever I have seen the power of God in a room full of people, it was that one. And there was no question as to what was happening there. If he doesn't, most of us will. At this particular World Service meeting, there was a great deal of emphasis on sponsorship. Not only personal sponsorship, which most of us know about, there is a new need in Alcoholics Anonymous for service sponsorship. We have reached a place where we're so big, it's time to begin making corporate decisions. Those decisions, in my opinion, must be made in accordance with the principles we already operate by. They will be solved faster and more efficiently if we go to General Motors' ways of doing business. We must not do that, in my opinion. So, service sponsorship becomes more and more important. And I have 3 service sponsors at the present time, and all they are past trustees. When I was a delegate, I had past delegates. And from each of these men, I have learned something in the last 3.5 years that guide me in my current service job and will probably guide me throughout the rest of my life. You know what AA get-togethers are like, with the opinions and the hollering and the disagreements and all that. What I'm to ask myself first, what do I want out of this? What's my personal agenda? I've got one, always. What is it? And can I fit it into the primary purpose of this get-together? If I can't, out it goes. What do I want out of this? Secondly, is it possible that I could be wrong? Oh, I hate that. Yes. It is always possible I could be wrong. And I don't even have to know how. If I understand that it's possible, I will moderate my behavior a little bit, and maybe we can get on with group conscience. And third, when it's really hot and heavy, and this came to us, as most of our really good stuff does, from a non-alcoholic. How many lives will be saved this week by this activity or this discussion? And it's made me a conservative liberal again. Countries sponsor countries in South America. There are travel restrictions, and one country can't publish literature, but they can distribute it. So Bolivia publishes the stuff and sends it to Colombia for distribution throughout South America. There's an Ibero-American Translations Council. Translating Spanish is a true problem, because each one of them speaks just a little differently. So they formed a council where each country will take part of what's going to be translated, and then they get together about 3 times a year and get out the best they can. Bolivia has 10 groups now, and they are being sponsored by Argentina. When Bolivia AA first started, all they had was a 24-hour book from Hazleton, until somebody told them that you can get material from New York. And now they have a large body of material. India sent a delegate. He was not allowed to be seated. In order to be seated at the World Service meeting, your AA structure must send you. You cannot send yourself. You can't pay for it. We're self-supporting through our own contributions, and we don't want anybody with money ever to be able to take control. Well, India didn't have any money. So the fellow brought himself with a full understanding he wouldn't be seated, but we opened the door so he could be among us. And he was fun. He had a personal agenda, money. And he gave this impassioned pitch for money and how we could all help him. And all we could do is smile and say, well, there isn't anybody in this room who has any money. This particular AA body doesn't have any money, ever. The fees are never even close. General Service New York pays $50,000 to cover the shortages that group's meeting comes up with every year. So there wasn't any money. And the minute he understood there wasn't any, he settled in and became a good AA member again. And then he came up with a better scheme. He says, what we'll have to do is have some of you come over there and talk to us about how you do it. And we'll go along with that. My Japanese friend Takayuki was back this year. Now he's about this tall. And he brought Mr. Suzuki with him, who's about this tall. And Takayuki's all laid back, and Suzuki's a samurai, tucked in chin and all. So when they made presentations, Takayuki would stand next to Suzuki and hold a microphone up to his mouth and talk in his ear so he'd know what to say. They have gone back on fire. They're having their 15th anniversary in 1990, right after Seattle, and would like to invite you all to come. There's all kinds of stuff here. What this particular meeting left me with, because it was all preparation for the trip that was coming up. The World Service meeting delegates gave us not some mandates, but some very strong feelings. They think that the World Service, U.S., Canada, should be the central distribution and repository system for all AA literature in whatever language. Now that's their feeling. They don't want us doing the work for them, but they would like us to set up a system whereby if you're in Sri Lanka and you need some literature, you can write us and we can tell you who in Sri Lanka has it. We will have a copy of it on hand. We are looking seriously into our policy on translating, and we're walking a delicate line again. In essence, it's this. For years we've been translating our literature that says you're really sick. We got all kinds of literature to make sure you understand you're sick. Then we have been saying, in effect, as soon as you're strong enough to cover it yourself, we'll come tell you how to get well. Because we haven't been doing the big book in other languages. We've waited for them to do it. We are looking at that policy based on some things the World Service meeting produced. Perhaps we'd be better off spending your money, putting in a manuscript form the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous for all the countries that are beginning to emerge, and have it ready so when they do need it, we can say it's here and put it right in their hands and then let them do it. We did this essentially with Poland. Poland, by the way, just celebrated their third General Service meeting, 2,000 members. That's terrific, because there were only about, I think we had 33 groups in Poland back in 1980 or 85. And now there's over 2,000 came to a General Service meeting. They have the big book now, Living Sober and the 12 and 12. Their government finally allowed them to do their own publishing. What we did with them, because they weren't allowed to publish, is that we published it, sent it to them, and we held on to the rights and loaned it to them. And as soon as they paid for it, it was theirs. And that's been our policy up to this point. Y'all need a quick break, because we're about to go to Russia. Why don't we take, 5 or 10 minutes, and then we'll head off?